Welcome to the Dom Sub Devotion Podcast. Every episode of Dom Sub Devotion is an authentic reflection of our real life in a loving 24/7 DS marriage. If you crave the passion and intensity of a power exchange dynamic inside of a deeply loving and intimate relationship, you've found the right place. You can always find more from us in the show notes and at infinitedevotion.com. Thank you for listening.
So today we're going to talk about control. And the reason I want to talk about control is because this concept of control is really central to power exchange relationships.
Sure is.
You can't really do dominance and submission or masculine-feminine polarity dynamics or any other sort of power exchange dynamic between two people without there being a give and take of control.
Yes.
And at the same time, there's probably nothing that people are more afraid of than control. Giving up control, taking too much control, being controlling, being controlled. And so I'm hoping that with this conversation and by sharing some of our experience of this word control and of how it has played out and impacted and been a part of our relationship, that we can maybe give some sort of a grounded path for people who are either in or want to be in these kind of relationships to have a healthier relationship with control as a concept, individually and together. And I think where I'd like to start is the most common challenge with this is the difference between being controlling and being in control. And you have some experience throughout your life with both sides of that. So how does it feel different for you to, in a man, to experience a man as being controlling versus experiencing a man as being in control in a more healthy way?
Well, I'm not sure we can jump that far ahead because I think it's helpful to back up here and actually talk about what control was for me.
Sure, start there.
And so I have to kind of tune into what and where I was in my earlier experience with this word, because really having to sit with the word itself and really tune into what am I associating with it? What feels good? What doesn't feel good when my mind goes this way or that way? And it's really what helped me really tune into the why behind the desire for control. So going a little bit back earlier in my life, no surprise, religion was a thing, organized religion. And it was the Lutheran Missouri Synod. And so there was definitely the good and the bad, the right and the wrong way to do things. And so I was well immersed into the church, the private school, everything. It was a structure and order in my life. Did I realize that? No. It was a very unconscious thing. But when you're born into the life experience where, for me, I went to private school once I was in a school age, 5 days a week. And I went to church on Sundays along with Sunday school. And so there was a lot of immersion into the Bible and how to live and do life right. And it was really about the doing. It was about more of the works, even though they might say it wasn't. So that was this safety for me in the world that I, again, didn't even realize was a felt sense experience for me, alongside this trying to do life right, trying to be perfect. And
It
so,
created some kind of structure for you to live within.
exactly, exactly. And then in my own reactions to my life experiences, and I believe this is inherent in the feminine. I'm going to speak from the feminine because I can't completely speak to and assume everything about the masculine is the same. So when I have life experiences and I feel big emotion or out of control, that again, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm doing. It's just this natural human response as a little girl. And so I also really clamped down and tried to create a lot of control in my experience, what seems to be a very, very early life experience. And I realized that no one was going to protect me. And so I had to protect myself. What is that? It's control. Maybe a different word, protection versus control, but it is also controlling everything about my life experience. Well, trying to. So it's limiting by nature in itself. So that's just how I started to show up in the world. And that's how I approached life. And it almost became this identity for me. And I would be validated in it by other people. And what was underneath all of this, like responsibility and self discipline, it was my ability to control, or trying to control my life experience. And I was damn good at it.
So to take off from there, just to give like my own side of that, like the earlier experiences around control, is a lot of my life felt very much out of control. I had my own experiences with childhood sexual abuse. I had, I had a relatively stable, I guess, childhood physically, but it wasn't always an emotionally stable home that I was raised in. And I always felt very different from the people around me and the people in my life. And in a lot of ways, kind of outcast and ostracized from almost everything because I felt so different. Maybe in part because of all of the stuff going on in my private life, maybe a part of that. But, for me, I think I sought more. I wished that I had more structure and more control than I did. And so in my experience, it's very different than yours because I did not have this, in some ways you were sheltered, right? In a lot of ways you
Absolutely.
were just sheltered.
I was.
And I guess I was too, but in a very different way. I was sheltered by living way out in the country, by being very isolated from other people, not having very many friends, feeling very unique and different in how I saw and experienced the world, and really spending a lot of time by myself as a young kid, a lot of time by myself. And I think I always wished that I had more control. I wanted to grow up, for example. I wanted to be an adult. My parents said I was like 7 going on 30. because I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to be away from there. I wanted to be in control of my life and to be able to live it the way I wanted to live it. So for me, I guess control, the concept of it always felt like if I had it, I could have freedom.
Is that really what it felt like as a young boy for you?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Because I am blessed to be a very intelligent human being.
You sure are.
And, you know, for better or for worse, a lot of times as a kid, I felt like I understood the world better than the adults around me did.
You probably did.
And
I mean, what child at 7 or 8 goes to the library and rents the cassette tapes by Jim Rohn,
oh yeah, I
right?
checked out all this, like the entire self-help section at our small town library before I was 10, listening to
Yeah,
stuff like Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and Les Brown, I think his name was. Yeah. Anyway,
that's incredible.
so for me, like, oh, another funny story for our listeners. I used to sneak the cordless phone into my bedroom after my parents went to bed, and I was like a regular call-in caller on one of the talk radio shows overnight, like the overnight shows. After my parents went to sleep, I would call in and talk to the guy that hosted this talk radio show, and um, I think he was just humoring me and probably amused by the fact that a kid called in once or twice a week to talk to him. But yeah, for me, it always felt like if I could be in charge, that I could just do things so much better. If I was in charge of my own life, but who is when you're 10, right? You can't be.
Hmm, that's a whole nother interesting question right there.
So, you know, both of these point at our very different experiences of control as a concept. And I guess I'm curious then for you, like, did you dream about growing up and being in charge of your own life? Or like, what did you dream about as a little girl in terms of self-ownership, if anything?
You're gonna make me cry. I didn't dream. I was so. The only thing I remember is wanting a horse as a little girl, and that got squashed. And then wanting to be a teacher. Like, that was the only aspirational thing I remember thinking about in my whole life. And like, that there was a point not that long ago that, gosh, it's hard to even say out loud, that I didn't even allow myself to desire. I controlled that piece of myself. Like, I don't know what all went into the early life years of that. I mean, it was sexual trauma, right?
Yeah,
So,
we both had it.
right. But I was dissociated from it. I've shared this before, but it was like as an adult, I heard that term along this like emotional healing journey of like dissociated memories. And I was like, I don't have one of those.
Which is exactly what someone who's dissociated from a memory would say.
It's freaking hilarious to me. And I laugh every time I remember that. Ah, okay. Tears are calmed down. Um, I got off on a tangent now. Bring me back.
I was asking you about dreams for self,
Mm,
like what you wanted to do with your life?
well, nothing. And like I became a mom when I was 19. And so my like whatever I wanted to do with my life became secondary. Like everything about my life became now I'm raising a child. Now I'm a mom. And it was like I didn't really exist anymore. Ever, really, when you look at my life before that. And so there was a lot of trying to just survive and live life and work really hard just to provide for one child. And then that became two, and that was it. And I do remember, like in my previous marriage, remember thinking like, all right, I need to do something so I don't continue to have kids and have live outside of my means in that way, because I wanted to live and give my two girls a life experience better than I had, meaning vacations and just more fun. And gosh, that didn't happen the way that I wanted it to either. So, as much as I tried to control my life, it was out of control.
And so, how do you think that plays into what you realized with me a few years ago? And this was already after you were wearing my collar, after you were my submissive, but you had a moment,
I did.
a big moment that we both will probably remember forever because you burst out crying so hard.
Yeah, let me share that.
Yeah.
Um, so this was after I sat with like, what is control to me? Because there was a little bit of that word that was like, but once I realized that there's a difference between control and domineering, and control and using it to hurt someone else, whether that's consciously or unconsciously. And I had been hurt in those ways by other people's trying to control me. And so, even with my past life experiences, there still was an acceptance to control. I mean, we were already Dom Sub, and you had already helped me wrap my mind around this leader and follower dynamic. And I freaking knew you loved me. You had a heart. And so there was no fear for me in being hurt by you, in giving you control of the ways that we had already discussed. So at some point, um, I don't know, 3 years ago, something like that,
Something
maybe
like that.
less. We were watching one of the 50 Shades of Grey movies for the second time. And there was a scene in there. I don't remember what the scene was. Maybe you do if you want to share it, but
I don't.
it's neither here nor there. Um, but we paused the movie, and I got up to walk to the bathroom, and it fucking hit me. Whatever I watched in that movie hit something in me. And the words that came out of my mouth were, as I'm crying, is, I need to be controlled. I had no idea where it came from.
Yeah, you didn't try to say that or even consciously think of it. It just poured out of you.
No, it's intuition. Because I've had some of those moments before I was even more awakened and connected to my body. Now I can see them looking back in life. Um, but that was this deeply intuitive moment where something connected inside of me. And when I experienced that with the tears, that feeling, I don't argue with. It's a knowing when it comes from the body in that way. And I shared it with you, and you were like, duh. No.
That was
In your head.
it was about my reaction. Yeah, obviously,
Once again.
says the collared submissive. I need to be controlled. Yeah, you are.
But, looking back at that, that was just a very, very important piece of my coming into this for me and not doing this from all the people pleasing, even though the desire still remains. I want to give you everything. I want to be everything. I love making you happy and giving you what you want. All of that still remains. It's just very aware and not entangled in any sort of wounding anymore.
That moment really shifted something in our dynamic. And it's one of the reasons that we don't mock 50 Shades of Grey. We got no problem with that movie. Like,
I love those movies, and I love the books more because it gives the full story.
Yeah, we don't need to make this about 50 Shades of Grey. We could maybe do a 50 Shades watch party sometime with our followers, do a live stream or something. But yeah, we don't have any problem with 50 Shades of Grey. It plays a very special part in our dynamic, in part because it was the only thing you knew about dominance and submission when I asked you to be my submissive. Go all the way back to episode 1 for that.
Well, let's just say this. Anna didn't know what this was either.
Touche. So what I sensed in you that shifted there was it was a point at which you took ownership of your submission, of what it was and could be for you.
Right? Because I didn't have this desire like some women come across these concepts much earlier in life. I didn't have that. I was very disconnected. I mean, the internet came about when we were in high school, right?
Yeah, we were old enough that we didn't have, neither one of us had internet access until high school age.
And I was never in the sexy romance section of the library.
Yeah. So something really shifted in how I experienced you taking ownership of what submission could be for you. And this is maybe a good point to transition to where I was starting a little bit, is the difference that you experience now that you've experienced healthy control. And I want to talk about what that really means and what it is. But now that you've experienced healthy control as leadership versus what you've experienced in the past, you mentioned before being hurt by other people's controlling, domineering tendencies. What's the difference?
Mm. Previous control in my experience, even in what I was doing to myself, but what other people would do to me, it was limiting. It was keeping me small. It was trying to not let me step out of line. It was not letting me be me. And I didn't even know that's what was going on. Now, the reason that I've needed the control was to be set free, because I needed to stop limiting and stop my self-control and hand the reins over to you, so I could literally start to get to know who I actually am. Because all I did was limit, put myself in a prison that I would have said I didn't want to be in, but I didn't even know I was in it and I didn't know how to get out. And so my experience of submission to you has been liberation. Like the depth of what I've connected to, love, pleasure, desire, abundance, like this whole new aspect of life. It's like I took the blurry glasses off and now I see this brightness and infinite possibility. And those words didn't even exist in my life before.
No. And this is, thank you for that, because it was a beautiful, simple explanation of the difference between what it is to be controlled in an unhealthy, unconscious way and controlled in a loving, conscious, healthy way.
Right. Thank you.
And what my goal in, again, control, power exchange relationships, dominance and submission, masculine, feminine, like control is a central part of being able to play in this, um, play this game of long-term love with intensity and passion. You don't get it without the give and take of control.
Absolutely.
But my goal in taking control of you has always been to, well, I wrote a post on our blog years ago that was called Use Your Control to Set Her Free. It's always been about the same thing I talked about as me as a kid. I wanted control of my life because I knew I could make it better if I was in charge. And I've looked at how you've been so hard on yourself, how you've beat yourself up, how you've held yourself down. And like, you were really committed to not changing or growing or improving. You were all in on staying shut down without even realizing you were.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never been asked that. I wasn't asked that question before, but I probably would have said, no, I'm open. But that's not what my actions were showing. It was year after year getting harder and harder on myself and making myself smaller and trying to essentially do the same things better that weren't working.
And so the same thing has been for me. Like, if I could just tell you what to do and you would just listen, I could make your life so much better. And that's what control has always been to me, is this sense of my own strength and my own connection to the truth and what's right, that I can see a positive path forward in anything. And this is what I wanted out of being your dominant and having you give up control to me. I wanted to make your life better with it. And it took some fighting to get you to let me. Not fighting, like we weren't boxing it out, but I had to battle with all of that shutdown and the fears and the self-limitation and all the ways you were absolutely convinced that I was wrong.
Oh my word. Sometimes I wonder, like, how do we even get here? Like, Really? I used to be that girl?
But it's a challenge for men, and it's even been a challenge for me at times when I have you continually essentially laying yourself at my feet and saying, "You've earned my trust. I'll do whatever you want." And that really about explains our, like, the depth of our dynamic in terms of control. And correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm not, but I don't just want to put words in your mouth. There's there's a complete exchange of power in terms of who's in control of day-to-day life between you and me.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to emphasize the freedom and the peace that I feel because of it. It's not oh my gosh, you don't get to make any of your own decisions. It's like that question isn't even a question, right?
Well, let's talk about that, and I'll come back to where I was going. The way I heard you answer that question before was something along the lines of, when it feels so good not to make my own decisions, why would I even want to?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that back. Yeah. And again, I know we've talked about this before, but it's not like you're telling me what clothes to wear every day or
I'm not
what
walking around micromanaging every lipstick color you choose.
or how I do my makeup or like whatever. Like that's that's silly.
Yeah. But there is this thing around power, and having control means having power. And I do have a lot of power and authority in this relationship, and I have to trust myself to use it wisely.
Yeah.
And this is why, for me, I believe with my whole heart that in order for a dominant to be in control of someone else's life, that he has to first be in control of his own life.
Absolutely.
Self-control is step zero of being able to be in a healthy power exchange relationship. People hate when I say this, so I'm going to say it again. But this starts and ends with health and fitness for a man who wants to be a dominant, because being able to be in control of your own body, your standards, your being the best that you can be, or at least being on a path to becoming your best in terms of how you take care of your body and your appearance, is it's not a it's about your body and the way you look, and it's not at the same time. It's really about, do you have control of yourself? Because if I want you to trust me to tell you how to live your life, and to trust that I'm going to make those decisions from a place of truth, and not just being like a giddy little boy who's like, I get whatever I want now. And then, like, that's how people get hurt. When dominants use the power and authority that's given to them to take control, to limit their submissive, to push her down, to do all of the things that you said you've experienced in the past, just so either you don't hurt me or you don't trigger me or upset me. If I don't have self-control, if I don't have control of my own experience of life, how the hell can you trust that I'm going to lead you in a way that's right for you and not just me getting what I want from you.
Well, again, oh, did you have something more to add?
Well, just that this has been an evolution for me because I did not have self-control. Even at the beginning of our dynamic, I've been called into this higher expression of myself, into this higher, um, to be a better version of me.
Yes, thank you for that. Because what I wanted to share was yes, it, I think you said it begins and ends with health and fitness. I don't think you really meant to say ends,
No, it
but
begins there.
but it begins there. I also just want to share, and some of you've heard this plenty of times before, but the man that I'm sitting here with today, who you are, like your Becoming a Dominant Man course is all about what you have went through and what it took in order for me to be in that lay myself at your feet and fully trust you. It's your side of what was required. And I sat at your feet for all of that content delivery. I know what's in that course and I believe it and it's honest. It's all of you. It's your heart and your soul. And what, like, it felt divine coming through all of what you delivered. It was so beautiful. And I loved it. I was almost sad when it was over because your ability to connect with the truth and deliver it is fucking amazing. And I feel the alignment and the harmony in my body. And I've been with you to experience where you were before and the man you are now. And we've walked through some shit together. Okay, let's rewind that. We walked through some fires. I don't like that.
Yeah.
And we let,
Shit would require us to have boots, and we didn't even have boots. So.
right. My point of why I changed this to fire is because we've had to let a lot of who we are, who we thought we were, burn away. We've had to let the pain that we caused each other burn away. We had to forgive and we had to stay hand in hand in those fires the whole time, connected in the love and the devotion of who and what we were together, because we are better together. And that's how we are one together. And it wasn't easy for you. Like I don't even know what you all had to go through. I don't know how much journaling you did. I don't know all of the meditating, the like self-reflection that you've done. I only know how I've experienced you and the shift that I've experienced in you and what that has allowed in me. And why I can give you control over my life without fear and say, I know you will protect me, provide for me, take care of me with all of the love and the devotion in your heart. And I trust you to make our lives better and to make magic out of it.
And that's the difference between control that keeps you in a box and control that sets you free.
Absolutely.
Is you get, like, that's the experience of life you get to live. And also, by the way, the experience that I get to have of you as my partner, as my wife, as my submissive. And telling you, well, here's maybe a very simple way of putting this. Control in this respect is more about telling you what you're not allowed to do to yourself than
Yeah.
it is about telling you what you have to do for me.
Yeah.
And instead of focusing on what I get out of this, it's about focusing on what I can give to you if you are willing to surrender to me.
And that is the beautiful thing that we've uncovered, you know, tying this into the masculine and feminine thing of the masculine being the doer, the like giver. When you have set up our lives and given your all to me, and felt this surrender opening my body and my life experience and my whole soul, it has opened this like flood back to you
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't there before.
Sure wasn't.
I'll admit it. It just wasn't. And I didn't know why. It like I would live in the, well, I guess that's just how I am.
Here's the one of the challenging pieces around this, at least for me, has been back in the days when you were pretty shut down. There were a lot of my needs that were not getting met in my life,
Hmm.
in this relationship, both in terms of the love and affection that I needed and the sex and the sexuality that I craved.
Yep.
There were a lot of needs that were going unmet for me. And then you put on a collar, and then you start to take ownership of this submission for yourself and telling me more and more, like, have your way with me. And when it had been so long of feeling like I had all of these unmet needs in myself, there was always a part of me that was like, I could just take this from her and she would give it to me. But I've always made myself resist that temptation to use dominance to take from you. And I've always aimed to use it to give to you, because then I'm still going to receive back from you, but I'm receiving back from fullness, from all of the things you've talked about here today, feeling free, feeling alive, feeling all of this admiration for me. And, you've said it before. Again, tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth here, but that you've had a lot of respect for the way that I've handled that, essentially not pushing when I could have.
Oh, absolutely.
I want you to talk about that, because I really sound like it really kind of sounded like I just humble bragged and patted myself on the back there. But
Oh no, you deserve that. Um, no, and you've had to come out of that a little bit in your own way as I've shifted into this, what I'm going to say, more authentic submission. But I recognized that now I can see in me that underneath all of this desire to move forward and become more of who I am, it was authentic. And there was a resistance to being forced. Now, why that's there, I don't know. Call it intuition, call it just be, maybe from wounding, probably a little bit of both. But the the softness that you approached all of this dominance and leadership with felt like such care to me. And there was never any arguing from me that you weren't doing it with heart, even in times where my ego would flare up and not really like it. When it calmed down, like I knew. I knew because I can feel the difference. And I've always felt your love guiding all of it. And again, what I was sharing before about the shift in how you were showing up and your connection to the truth. And so I know along the way, like I would say, I don't want to be forced. I don't want to be forced because you wanted me to own this for me. And there's no room for forcing if I'm trying to make this real. And I knew I could. Again, I don't know where that came from, but I just knew I could. I knew it would happen. And now I can see how the word allow is the summary. When we just surrender, it's an allowing of the true self to be seen, not the facade, not the ego, not the identities. Like all of this aliveness, all of this sexuality, all of this love, it was just there when I've let go of those other things. And so we've talked about this so much, and that's why you can put those words in my mouth, because I've said this to you so many times, is I haven't seen room for force. And when I'm laid open to you, there's no force necessary. And that's what I truly get to experience now.
This comes back to the concept and importance of patience in on the side of the leader, on the side of the dominant, because if I'm impatient, I'm going to, and impatience, neediness, pretty much the same thing. If I'm being impatient and needy, I'm going to be far more likely to use force to take from you. And this is why, again, self-control is so important, to be able to see the bigger picture here. When you were saying, lead me, I'll do whatever you want, and I have all of these unmet needs and all of these desires and everything that I see that would be better if we just did it my way. To take a deep breath and say, what do I need to show her so she can find this for herself and make it real? And if it takes 6 months instead of to make something be real versus getting what I want immediately in 6 minutes, it's worth it. Because one little bit of that authentic surrender is worth a lifetime of patience. I just told you this yesterday in a conversation we were having. I said, I'll wait 20 years if that's how long it takes you to be ready to hear what it is that I'm sharing with you. It's that important to me. It's that meaningful to me. I won't rush it.
No, and a common thing that we've heard from women is, I want to give up control. I want to let go. And you see this in the more BDSM focused bedroom scene kink play where, the woman is blindfolded and bondaged, and like it's that portrayal, it's the black and white image with maybe a little bit of splash of red of her being on a bed and she's lost in some pleasure. Maybe there's some implements, whatever. But even that, when you just live in that scene, it's It's in the physical. Yes, it's a lot of pleasure. It can be all great things. There is no diminishing of the fun and the pleasure and all of that. And the kink, great, love it, right? But what that is pointing to is the deeper desires inside. It's, I want to let go. And so it's easy to maybe do it in a bedroom play. It's, I want to give up control, take charge in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
But again, when that desire is there, I've said this before, it's holy. It's pointing at something more of who you are and the possibility of what can be in life. And that's why, like for us, I think we've said this before, but this whole relationship was focused outside of the bedroom before it really even expanded there to what it is now. And I know a lot of people want to know about what that is, but that's not yours to know right now. But why I love sharing this is because I've come into this from like the opposite side that a lot of people come into this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm here to say, like, it is so possible to really live in the surrender beyond preferences, to live in the jump off a cliff and I'm going to free fall and like I'm going to be taken care of. I'm not going to get hurt. Metaphor, obviously. And you've shown me all of this because you've had patience and you've had heart and connection to the truth.
The last place I want to go here is to bring this back around to freeing you from self-control.
Yeah.
Because, we did an episode a while ago where we talked about you doming yourself.
I sure did.
And I think the way we titled that episode was something like, you can't be submissive to me if you dom yourself.
Right.
So in seeing all of the ways that you would limit yourself, and again, I was the one before we were this version of us, I was the one who had no self-control. I was the one who was very
I'm sorry.
I
It's so true.
it's so true. I couldn't keep myself, I couldn't set a goal and follow through on it. I felt completely incapable of maintaining some sense of self-control. In fact, to a point where I lost trust in myself, in my own ability to even follow through on anything. And this was a man in his mid-30s who had already started one successful company and sold it, and then started a second one that was extremely successful and was functioning extremely well. And I had done all of the things. I am evidently a very capable person of accomplishing things. And I lost all trust in my own ability to even follow through on a simple, like, set a goal and accomplish it. I share that just to share how out of control I felt and how little self-control I had. And of course, the way these things work, you responded to that by going even deeper into your own self-control.
Yeah, I suppose that would be why. Part of it. Yeah.
For sure. And so, yes, it's been essential for me to step into self-control, to take control of myself, my life, my fitness, my appearance, everything about myself. I've had to gain control over my own life. you've also had to stop being in control of yours and be able and willing to let go.
Yes, absolutely.
And as important as it is for a dominant to be in self-control, it is equally as important for a submissive to be out of control. And when I say that, it makes the hair stand up on the back of some people's necks with fear. What do you mean being out of control? But what is submission if it's not being out of control?
Well, when you say it like, I want to give up control, that's saying the same thing, right? I want to be out of control. And that is the very perfect description of how I get to live now. And you invite more of me, and we both are like, wow.
There's a lot of you in there.
I know. And it's like, oh, it's just been incredible to even start to know myself. And I just feel like I'm still at the beginning.
The point I want to make on this, like as the submissive being out of control, this is where it is my job as your dominant to be your control. And this is where I take control, not by telling you what to do all the time, but by telling you, if you go live big, if you let go of control and live abundantly, I will keep you safe. I will be the one who's looking after you and making sure that you don't run off of a cliff, making sure that you don't get hurt to the best of my ability.
Right.
Or if you do, I'll be the one making sure that you're taken care of and looking after you. And so for me, it's like exerting control in a way that says, I'm going to draw the boundaries way out here of this big walled garden of life that you get to play in. So you don't have to decide and worry about and figure out what's okay and what's not. Where is it safe? Where is it not safe? Where am I going to get hurt? How do I protect myself? But you can just live your life and live an expansive, abundant life and trust that I'm going to be there guiding you and steering you and making sure that you are okay, so that you don't have to be in a state of self-control, but you can be not under my control, but inside of my control.
That is a very good distinction. And that's how I experience all of this. And again, I've said this before, but I am way more fun. I'm way more alive. I'm like
You
everything.
sound pretty sure of yourself there. I'm way more. You are.
I know I'm more fun. Like, I know without a doubt. I can own that.
You are.
For sure. But my point in sharing that is because I enjoy my life, that overpours into yours.
Mm-hmm. I get to have a partner who's enjoying her life and having fun and feeling free.
And like, this is how, when we've been together for 15 years, our life only continues to get better and more fun and filled with more pleasure and expansiveness and abundance. And like, I believe those things are just infinite in life. And when we desire to live big and experience all of life that we possibly can, this is how we feel more in love and desire each other more and more by the day.
It's how we get to be the people who have been together for 15 years who get approached. We did an episode recently where we were talking about we're going out on a date night tonight.
Yeah.
If you listen to that episode, well, we went on that date night. one of the things that happened on that date night was someone came up to us asking us, how long have you been together?
Side note, we were at a live band and we were standing there dancing a little bit, just enjoying it.
I had my hands all over you, like
Yeah.
I usually do.
Yeah.
And so someone came up to us and said, how long have you two been together? And we both felt the assumption this person assumed that we were like newly
Nope.
together.
Yeah.
And she was a little taken by surprise when we said 15 years. But that's what this approach to control and surrender and being in control and out of control, that's what this does. And it's how you get to have both. Again, the driving question that has driven all of this work for me to create this union between you and I, this business where we get to share all of this, everything is how do we have both deep, loving closeness and passionate, desire filled sex with the same person over the long term. I've never been willing to accept that, but that's not possible. And it is possible. And we are living it. And we're living proof of it. And control plays an important role in that because it's like the playground of leadership and followership. And it can be used for good or for bad. And so I hope that for anyone who's listening or watching, that this conversation has added some language and understanding for you around what control can be and what it doesn't have to be, and how it can actually be a very valuable and beneficial thing when it's handled with love and care and respect.
Yeah. So if you have any more questions for us, we're always happy to answer or answer them on another podcast. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much for listening and watching.